Good morning, you're watching Market Cafe on ET Now with me, Somit Sarkar, and my co-anchor, Ankita Saxena. First up, let's look at the global cues, and Ankita will be giving us all those details.
Yes, Somit, US and UK markets were shut on the back of holidays, but European markets seem to have started on an upbeat note. The first trading session of 2023 was on a good note for the European markets as Eurozone manufacturing data suggested the worst had passed after a year marred by fears of a recession as central banks hiked rates globally, especially as energy prices recede to the levels of last February. We are seeing a bit of an uptick in the shares, and the bond yields of Europe's largest economy, which is Germany, dropped from their highest levels in more than a decade as investors brace themselves for the inflation data that is due this week. Do watch out for that. The Eurozone CPI numbers are expected to come out this week, a very important number to give us an idea of where the inflation is at right now. The Pan-European Stock 600 rose 1% in trade. It was primarily supported by the consumer discretionaries. DAX was also up 1.1%, 1% in trade, and CAC was also up more than 1.5%, 1.8% up in trade. So that was the roundup of the European markets. How was the crude faring, Samit?
Well, on the first trading session of calendar year 2023, the crude prices are pretty much steady. If you see, though there are near-term concerns when it comes to because of the global slowdown, but there is a possibility of a lower supply coming in by Russia because of the output cut that they have said because of the oil price caps that the G7 nations have imposed. So Brent crude is currently trading around the $85 per barrel mark. When it comes to gas prices, US gas prices fell on the first trading session because of a warmer weather, which would lead to lower demand of gas in the US market. And also, if you see, the inventory levels are just 3% below the past 5-year averages. Also, the output has recovered very much quickly in the US market, and all these factors have led to a fall in the US gas prices. Meanwhile, if you see in the European market, the gas prices have been steady, and we have seen slight gains coming in from the on the European gas prices front, and this is also because of low liquidity in the market that we have been seeing. And when it comes to gold, they have edged higher on the first trading session because of the slowdown concerns as pointed out by IMF, and they're saying that the global economy will continue to slow in the calendar year 2023. Currently, if you see, gold prices are up by around 0.5%, and they're trading around the $1,835 per ounce mark currently.
Right, so that was the crude check for you. Now let's quickly look at the events that you need to watch out for today. First up, we have the US S&P Global Manufacturing PMI that's likely to come out today. We also have Satya Nadella of Microsoft, who will be addressing everyone at the Microsoft Summit today. We also have back home, we have SBI, a meeting of the Executive Committee of the Central Board to consider a fundraise of 10,000 crore rupees during FY23. So that's the meeting that SBI is going to hold. And we also have a listing of 12.8 lakh new securities of Som distilleries that will be issued to the non-promoters on a preferential basis. So these are the events to watch out for in today's session.
Well, moving on to some global news, Australia's housing market suffered its biggest annual decline since 2008 in 2022. Now, sharp interest rate hikes impacted buying power in the country. The National Home Value Index fell nearly 5.3% in 2022, which was its first decline that we have seen since 2018. Now, annual falls were the biggest in the bellwether market of Sydney, which slid nearly 12.1%, followed by an 8.1% drop seen in Melbourne.
And International Monetary Fund Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva warned that the global economy faces a tough year. She said a third of the global economy will be in recession this year. US, European Union and China will see the economy slow down. She also said that even in countries that are not in recession, it would feel like a recession for hundreds of millions of people.
Well, China has seen a dip in its equity markets, but analysts are looking at signs of revival. So what are these signs, and what does 2023 hold for the Chinese market? Vikram Oza explains this, and we also caught up with the industry expert like Geoff Dennis to help understand it all better. Take a look at it.
Now, if you're a stock market investor closely looking at investing in foreign listed equities, then you're probably tracking the developments in China right now and tracking them very closely. So if you've been unable to complete your research because of the celebrations of the new year, don't worry, we've got you covered. So these Chinese stocks that we are talking about, they ended 2022 in the red. This is the third successive year that the Hang Seng Index has ended the year lower. But quite frankly, things are looking up from here. If analysts, the ones that we've been looking at, if they are to be believed, then things are changing for the better. Because the main factors that analysts are looking at, they believe it's going to aid Chinese equities. And these factors are the government's economic revival plans, their efforts to revive their ailing property market, and relatively cheap valuations right now, which make investments into China more favorable than most emerging and developed markets. Credit Suisse has been the latest to upgrade Chinese equities. It went from neutral on China to overweight. Other analysts say that the rising infections in China may disrupt economic activity in the short term, but they too suggest a buy on dips. That practice would reward investors handsomely going ahead. While China's relative valuation within emerging and developed markets looks quite attractive, its current valuation compared to its historic valuation makes it yet another factor that could favor the bulls. Analysts are expecting China's loose monetary policy to favor the bulls at a time when central banks around most parts of the world are still hawkish. But does that mean it's all smooth sailing if you were to enter the Chinese market right now? Well, there's a reason that Chinese equities have not done well over the years. It is Xi Jinping's policies and, of course, his political ambitions which have made the market riskier for foreign investors. Another major factor, of course, to watch out for is the state of the property sector in China, which is yet to show those signs of revival. The real estate industry, so to speak, is especially important for China because that's the industry that contributes a major share of Chinese GDP. To make things worse right now, there are several developers who are sitting on huge debt piles, which could blow up if the country's recent real estate plans fail to revive the sector.
And moving on to some news coming in from Mexico. Mexico's Supreme Court has elected a female president to lead the nation's highest judicial body for the first time. Justice Norma Pina was sworn in for a 4-year term as president of the court, which she has promised to keep independent. She was sworn in after a 6-5 vote.
Well, the US President Joe Biden said Washington is not discussing joint nuclear exercises with South Korea. Now, he contradicted the remarks by South Korean counterpart as tensions flared with North Korea. Now, the South Korean president had previously said that Seoul and Washington are discussing possible joint exercises using US nuclear assets. Now, Biden says no nuclear drills with Seoul after Yoon's comment.
Tesla Inc. reported record production and deliveries for the fourth quarter electric vehicles. And the world's most valuable automaker still missed the Wall Street estimates. The company was burdened by slowing demand, rising interest rates, and fears of a recession.
Well, Dubai has been relaxing laws for some time now, and in its latest, it has scrapped its 30% alcohol tax and license fee. Remember, the Arab nation needs residents who want to drink at home have this permit. Now, this latest move is thought to be an attempt to make the city more attractive to foreigners and an apparent bid to boost tourism in the country. It is still not clear whether the move will be permanent or is on a trial basis.
And Ukraine claims that it has killed around 400 Russian soldiers in a missile attack. There is no official confirmation yet on the numbers of casualties. Russian nationalists as well as the pro-Russian officials have acknowledged the attack while disputing the figure of 400 deaths. Now, speaking at a conference, India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar emphasized on the need for both the countries to go back to a dialogue and diplomacy. and violence is not the answer. Listen in.
With regard to the Ukraine conflict, let me underline that India remains deeply concerned. We sincerely believe that this is not the era of war. Differences must be settled on the negotiating table. It is imperative that there is a return to dialogue and diplomacy. Prolonged conflict will not serve the interests of any party. My Prime Minister has been in contact with the leaders of both nations, pressing our point of view in that regard. We are also increasingly anxious about the knock-on effects of the conflict in terms of accessibility and affordability of fuel, food, and fertilizers. This is a growing concern for the global south.
With that, let's slip into a short break and we'll be back with more domestic news on the other side. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. You're watching Market Cafe. Let's move on to some news on the domestic front now. DBM Secretary Tuhin Kanta Pandey speaks about the difficulties in divestment of BEML, SCI and BPCL and how they are planning to overcome them. Let's listen in to what he had to say.
Are BEML and SCI very complicated divestments? You've been trying to sell, you've been trying for the demerger, but the process, I think, is just getting elongated. You see something happening on SCI and BML in next financial year?
Well, yes, because they have a bit difficult because of the land. Because if you have a lot of real estate or that kind of land attached to an operating company, then obviously, because these are listed companies, so the shareholders of SCI and BML ought to get the right value for their shares. So by demerging, what you are ensuring is that the real estate price of the land of the real estate, which is capable of earning, will be available to them. So therefore, when you demerge, every shareholder will get another share of the demerged company, and that will be basically having a company with land. So obviously, the sum of parts will be far larger than if it is together. And also it works for investors, because why should investors be paying for the real estate when it is really coming forward to share? Ultimately, we have to value things. So the demerger process is to be done legally under the law, and that has certain processes. First motion, second motion, and public invite, shareholders meeting, creditors meeting, and all of that in the listed companies is an essential part of the process. It's largely like what happens in NCLT. The MCA follows a similar process. So therefore, I think once the demerger is done, the value will be separated and it will be listing done, and then the financial bids will be possible.
So 12 to 18 months is a realistic
Incidentally, we are doing actually a demerged company. These are the processes also we are doing for the first time.
Yes.
And we have actually a certain change of law also along with that to make it, to facilitate it. For example, if you do a demerger in a case of government companies, then there will be a capital gains implications.
Yes.
That has been taken off in case of strategic disinvestment. Similarly, there could be a stamp duty implication at the time of demerger. That will be an additional stamp duty merger. So that particular point has also been taken off through necessary changes in law. So therefore, what we are really also laid down over the past 1.5 years is a foundation for similar such demerger, where unlocking of land value can also be undertaken.
Understood. It's not easy in a sense to divest an asset like BML and SCI. I completely understand that. Is BPCL completely off the table? And why do you think BPCL strategic sale did not go through?
BPCL is not off the table. Only the transaction, that particular transaction, that particular EOI, that has been terminated. And one of the reasons, we have stated the reasons, and it is there on our website. Actually, the kind of turmoils that energy markets have gone through, both initially for energy transition and subsequently post-Ukraine, that I think given the size of that particular transaction, there were not enough, interest in the bidders to proceed further. Initially there was, but when this markets went through a lot of uncertainties.
But BPCL could be revisited if global market
Yes,
conditions are stable.
That's what we have said also.
Well, the government released a consultation paper on regulating online gaming. Now, Ministry of State for Electronics and Information Technology Rajiv Chandrasekhar, while speaking to ET Now, said that there will be enhanced focus on women and child safety. He also added that the consultation process will begin from next week and the final rules will be placed before the Parliament at the earliest. Listen into that bite.
We have put forth comprehensive IT rules that create the guardrails for the online gaming industry and the online gaming startup ecosystem. We believe that the online gaming opportunity is a significant one for Indian startups and the Indian youth, and it's a huge global opportunity, and we want more and more startups to start, grow and succeed. And I think these rules provide a very clear, predictable roadmap for them to build and develop their platforms. It lays out clear principles that you cannot have online betting, you cannot wager on the outcomes of these online intermediaries, and as long as you don't do that, you can innovate in any which way you can. And like I've heard multiple times, and I have said multiple times, the Indian history and Indian culture has so many stories that lend themselves to be very well gamified, that we think this is a tremendous opportunity for the generation of startups that are waiting to jump into online gaming.
But what are the restrictions for children, and how will you protect the children from participating in these?
No, look, as you know, this is going for consultation, so we have put forth our thoughts, which is consistent with the Digital Personal Data Protection Bill, which is that children above the age of 18 do not require any consent, and therefore it is a corollary of that children below the age of 18 will require parental consent for gaming. Now, there are obviously many views on that, and we are happy to openly hear all those views. We will be consulting with parents and school teachers and principals as well.
All right, with that, it's time for us to slip into a short break. But before we slip into the short break, here's what's lined up for you on the show coming up. That's called The Market. We have S. Narain of ICICI Prudential on his outlook for 2023. We have Vinod Agarwal of VE Commercial Vehicles on CVs being in the fast lane. We also have Rakesh Arora on the metal pack shining, and we finally have Anil Gupta of KEI Industries on the growth triggers for the company.